Conservative Party officials have begun verifying ballots. The leadership race is in its last month, and Canadians can watch as those member ballots come in. We did have some action on the scene there a few moments ago or an hour ago, but there really isn't anyone doing that now, so we might show you a shot if that changes later on. The party was supposed to have a fiery debate this week, or a fiery week, I should say, with a leadership debate on Wednesday, but that morphed into a fireside chat instead with the Independent Press Gallery. First, Leslyn Lewis pulled out, saying she had a fever and ear infection, then Peter MacKay bowed out. Is it just the latest bump in what some have called a lackluster leadership race so far, or might things really heat up in these final weeks? Time for our weekly check-in with Conservative strategists. In Ottawa tonight, former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Harper, now Managing Partner at Rubicon Strategy, Corey Tenaik. Joining us from Toronto, Shakir Chambers is a Senior Consultant with Navigator and in Lindsay, Ontario. Jenny Byrne, a former top staffer to Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Ontario Premier Doug Ford. She's now Principal at Jenny Byrne and Associates. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Good to see you.
Happy Friday.
Jenny, why don't I start with you? So I just want to start on this question of the debate from a strategic point of view. Ms. Lewis said she was ill, and then Peter MacKay, bowed out right after. What do you think was behind the decision, especially where Mr. MacKay is concerned?
Well, I think Leslyn was obviously ill. I've spoken to people on her campaign, and that's why she wasn't there. I think it's smart. It was a smart move for the MacKay campaign to pull out as well. When you're the front runner, the least amount of debates as possible. I've seen elections lost on debates, but I've never seen one won. So I think it was smart for them to pull out, and of course they had to change the whole format of their evening.
Shakir, when it comes to that whole concept of do you do interviews, do you do debates, especially in these final weeks, we've had it hard. I've been requesting them all, and it hasn't been easy to land an interview with any of them. I think we have one coming up next week. I'm off, but my replacement, Catherine Cullen, will do that, which should be interesting. But it hasn't been like they're chomping at the bit to be interviewed on a political show. What do you think the strategy is behind that? Is it like Jenny said, you just, especially if you're in the front, you don't want to put yourself out for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the risk of having a major gaffe on air definitely outweigh the potential coverage of you not being in a debate or not having an interview. I also think most campaigns are probably more focused on get out the vote as much as possible, as opposed to trying to persuade voters. I think we were speaking about this last week, where I think most members have probably made up their mind as far as they're definitely their number one leadership candidate. Number 2 and 3 could be up in the air, but I think most people are not really going to change a lot of members' minds at this point. So why go out there and risk a potential gaffe on air that could really derail a lot of things?
Corey, last week you thought, based on your time speaking to people, particularly in Saskatchewan, that it wasn't necessarily a done deal, that everyone hadn't completely made up their mind. What's your sense now as we inch closer to that final time?
I don't think it's a done deal at all. I think that the lackluster nature of the race has actually got people questioning where they want to put their number one. I think Leslyn Lewis has certainly gained a lot of momentum. My personal view is that MacKay is probably going to be the winner. But I think the story of the campaign is Leslyn Lewis, and it's unfortunate that she wasn't able to be at the debate. I think it would have been good for her if she hadn't fallen ill to be able to do that. As I think people are very interested in an alternative.
Jenny, when it comes to if there are, a number of members who haven't yet made up their mind, when it comes to them making up their mind, what do you think right now are, the issues that they're gravitating towards, or the reasons that they're gravitating towards for determining that decision ultimately? What are they thinking about in arriving at that choice?
Well, I think it depends on who the member is. I think that at the end of the day, Conservative members want to make sure that we elect the person that is best suited to or best able to beat Justin Trudeau. And I think that is going to be one of the main factors that Conservative members are going to be looking at. I agree. I agree with Corey that I think most members have made up their mind. In terms of who they're voting for. I think it's great. Leslyn has definitely been the story of this leadership race, and I think it's fantastic. But I just think that she is not going to be able to have the horses to bring her over the finish line. I just don't think her lack of French and what have you. Conservative members they know that we need to elect a leader that can converse somewhat in French. So I think it's coming down to Aaron, and it's coming down to McKay, and it's now just GOTV. And you see the different teams. I know Aaron's campaign is out saying they're doing a ton of GOTV. Peter McKay and his team have teams of people that are out knocking on doors of members in ridings and helping them, reminding them to vote. So I think it's going to come down to that. There's not a lot of time left for people to get their ballots in.
When it comes to Shakir, people ultimately making that decision, I know that you think that many of them already have. When you think about what motivates that decision, I was looking at some of the tweets of various MPs, for example, recently who have come out in support of different candidates. And in particular, I would note when it comes to Peter McKay, a lot of them in the lines that they tweet out or in the press release that they put out, it always talks about unity and unifying the party, and that Peter McKay is the right person to do that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what the tweets say. Does that feed into what Jenny was talking about, that it's really important to have somebody who can ultimately win the next election, and in order to do that, you're going to need a party that's unified?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to need the entire Conservative family to kind of be unified as we go into the next election. But I think when we're looking at like what people are kind of focusing on, I think there's pretty much just kind of two camps. There are those that are like the ethics and values, that's really their core kind of the narrative. And there are those that are focusing on like the beat Justin Trudeau kind of narrative. And I think McKay has kind of run that campaign since day one of just focusing on, I'm the guy to beat Justin Trudeau. I'm ready to beat Justin Trudeau. And I think Mr. O'Toole has done a similar thing as well, but I think Mr. O'Toole is still playing in the same kind of space as Leslyn Lewis, Derek Sloan, as far as the ethics and values kind of candidate. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of downfalls for him, if you will, that he's competing for those votes with three candidates, where I think Mr. McKay is operating in a space where he's continued his narrative from day one and has positioned himself as the guy to campaign against Justin Trudeau. And I think that's really having a lot of appeal moving forward.
Do you think that's true, Corey? And do you think, especially on that question of unity, do you think Peter McKay is, I guess, positioning himself there, and do you think voters are believing it?
Well, I guess we're going to find out.
True.
I'd be less worried about unifying the party between the leadership camps and more worried about unifying the voter base, particularly in Western Canada, where I think appeal of the Wexit is quite strong. And I think that the risk of a fracturing of the Conservative voter coalition is very high going into this election in a way that we haven't seen since 1993.
Do you think that's true, Jenny? Do you observe that as well in your conversations?
Well, I think we'll see by the results of the leadership vote. It seems evident that Leslyn is doing very well throughout the prairies, Manitoba, especially Saskatchewan. Any campaign you speak to, including her opponents, are saying that it looks like she's going to clean up in Saskatchewan. So I guess we'll have to see with the results and what the party wants to do, because ultimately what Conservatives have to decide is are we going to unite behind whoever is elected and try to beat Justin Trudeau, or are we going to go through some more internal turmoil and among ourselves? And I'm not really sure that Conservatives, that's where the majority of Conservatives across the country are at.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.